Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for being here. Congratulations on another gorgeous day on this planet, in this solar system, in this universe, in this galaxy, in this time, space. Thank you for your practice, for your study, for your participation in this Sangha, your support, patrons, Patreon, PayPal, those who are buying mandalas, buying books, especially. It's not a lot of money, but it's enough to keep us going, and that's what we need. So what some of you are I shouldn't say more. Some of you are able to you know what? I'm not going to go down that path. All of you are very supportive. Like, subscribe, that's a support. Right? Commenting, that's a support. Because it all works to support this endeavor. Not least of which is your practice. That's the core of support, is your striving for Buddha-ness in your life, right? And by striving, I mean maintaining it throughout your life. Because when you chant, you achieve it. But maintaining it, staying aware of it, inculcating its lens of clarity throughout samsara, that's the hard part, yeah? Let's just say it out loud. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. In that vein, we're going to continue with the Vimalakirti, and yes, we're going to go through the exhortation of Shakyamuni to have some of his disciples go visit Vimalakirti and check on him, check on his illness. But the responses have been changing. Sometimes subtly, sometimes quite majorly. The format is, I can't do it because I'm not worthy. Or I'm sorry, not competent. Same thing. And they all have a justification, right? Good old justifications. Because, here's a story of something that happened and I felt small. Vimalakirti is so wise. It's funny, this doesn't seem to impede them following Shakyamuni Buddha around, but this wise, wealthy man, they're just not qualified to go and offer compassion, love. What is this strange mental justification? What's the fear going on here? Because that's what's underneath all of this, right? There's something manifesting, some sort of a fear in these people. And they're the last of the people that should be feeling fear. So where does fear come from? Have you ever noticed justifications of anything? Things, especially those things that we just take for granted. I just don't do that. We don't even think about the justifications. We just have decided that's something I don't do. We don't question it. And when we do, we come up with these great justifications. But we never question the justification deeply enough to get to its root. Because justification is almost a direct replacement for fear. Fear that comes from the only place it can come from, attachment. You're afraid of losing something as though you have it. You own it. You possess it. And whatever this act is, this action to take is, triggers for you the idea that you might lose something. And that's the delusion. That's what Buddhism is identifying. You're keeping yourself from your enlightenment, from happiness, from accomplishment, from growing your, manifesting your maximal potential, your enjoyment of life, by this false doctrine you have pounded into your consciousness. You need to get rid of it. You need to step over it, walk around it. No longer be underneath its auspices because it's vapor, it's empty. But habit energy has a strong momentum, doesn't it? It has its own inertia, doesn't it? And sometimes incredibly hard to recognize, especially in ourselves. So, I bring all of this up because now we're going to deal with Rahula, right? A relative. And Shakyamuni turns to Rahula and he says, you need to go visit Vimalakirti and check on him. And of course, Rahula says, oh, but I'm not competent, and here's why. But this story is interesting, a little different than what we've heard so far. I recall how once in the past the sons of the wealthy men of Vaishali came to the place where I was, bowed their heads in obedience, and questioned me. So these are the sons of wealthy men. So here's that caste thing, which isn't really about the caste system in this story. It is about an assumed, haven't we all had, and maybe you're a wealthy person, and even you are aware that there are wealthier still, and you have your own attitudes about those who are less wealthy or poor. And if you're in the 90 percentile that's poor, we've had attitudes about rich people since we were 3 years old, yeah? So this is a deeply cultural habit energy. So I'm curious to see what we're going to identify challenging this, because each one of these interlocutions are about some different aspect from which we human beings, in our minds, create these insurmountable obstacles. Remember, Buddhism is about the mind, attitude, and intent. So here we go. These wealthy sons of wealthy men, that's another layer of that privilege. And they come to me and they bow their heads to me. What does that do to the ego? Let's not concentrate on that too much, but don't forget it. They bowed their head and they questioned me. Ah, Rahula, they said. You are the Buddha's son. Shakyamuni's boy, yeah? But you cast aside your claim to the rank of a wheel-turning king and left the household life to become a monk. Now understand, the household life is a life of the societal construct, yeah? with all of the traditions of filial piety, taking on the business of the family, your responsibility to mother and siblings and father and so on and so forth, right? At first, when Shakyamuni left his family to pursue the life of a monk, which he did for some 12 years, right? A lot of people shunned him for that. There's a very big class divide where some saw him as taking a deeply important step in the spiritual development of his self as well as his family. Many people saw him as deserting his family. So there's this societal construct that's you're damned until you do, and if you do in a way that people aren't familiar, you're damned for doing, and societies, yes, cultures. But here's the son of Shakyamuni. He leaves the house to become a monk. What for? Your dad's the Buddha. The hell do you need to live? You're deserting. What? How can you do that? It's irresponsible. I explained to them the benefits and the rewards one gains by leaving the household life as the law describes them. In other words, he didn't just run off. He focused his life on the law of enlightenment, yeah? But at that time, Vimalakirti approached and said to me, Rahula, oh no, what's Vimalakirti going to say? You should not speak of the benefits and rewards gained by leaving the household life. Well, I don't know if that's actually what I was doing, but yeah, I guess I was justifying my leaving the household. So Vimalakirti, very critical, is there to point out how you should see that differently. Because to be without benefits and without rewards is to leave household life. So, okay, what do you mean? In the case of things that are conditioned in nature, one may speak of them as having benefits and rewards, but one who leaves household life enters the realm of the unconditioned, and in the realm of the unconditioned, there are no benefits or rewards. Okay, now we're getting into technicalities, right? I'm sure Rahula was trying to refer to the teachings that say that your real rewards are in enlightenment. Isn't that the reward body of Buddha? Right? You have this provisional manifest, what's another word that's used? Accommodative body, this physical form, so that you can realize the Dharma of Buddha, the experience of Tathagata, and that experience, while in this form, is the reward body. So, all right, Vimalakirti, I understand this is an earlier sutra. Maybe there's going to go about a different way. But it's kind of a rough criticism of Rahula without really knowing what Rahula was talking about. But there we go with words again, right? Our attachment to the meanings of words. Rahula, leaving the household life is not this, and not in between. It means abandoning the 62 erroneous views to reside in nirvana. It is accepted by the wise and carried out by sages. It means conquering and subduing the host of devils, moving beyond the 5 realms of existence, purifying the 5 eyes, acquiring the 5 powers, and cultivating the 5 roots of goodness. It means not troubling others, but removing oneself from sundry evils, refuting the non-Buddhist doctrines, transcending the realm of makeshift names, shaking off mud and defilement. It is without ties or attachments. It is without personal possessions, without thought of possessions, without fluster or confusion. It means harboring joy within, guarding the minds of others, pursuing the practice of meditation, and freeing oneself from all fault. Maybe not a good word to use there. That's a translation, of course. But in reference to everything he said, these false attachments, yes? And false behaviors based on false attachments, right? Because behavior figures largely in the Buddhist understanding of manifesting highest potential in this life, is that you behave better. If one can do all this, then one has truly left the household. Okay, now it becomes much clearer what Vimalakirti is pointing to. And his criticism of Rahula's answer more apt. You see, those wealthy sons, they criticized Rahula for leaving the household, because certainly to wealthy sons, and this is true of anyone, wealth or not, but certainly there's a certain cultural reality to wealth that is very hierarchical, very attached to the org chart. Daddy's money, mommy's money, inheritance, heiring, H-E-I-R, heirs. So the idea of leaving the household is kind of an affront to the hierarchy, to the wealth, to all that earthly attachment. How do you do that in order to go other? And what Vimalakirti is pointing out is that's a false argument. That's a false perception. That leaving the household is a stand-in cultural imperative for going along to get along. Do what everybody else says. Do what the organization of society subsists on. Make children to pay more taxes. Make laborers. You know, the whole governmental mechanism, the economies of a society belong to the engine. Express yourself fine. You can do that in your spare time. The rest of the time, you are a cog of the state. Leaving the household is a conceptual idea of shunning that, leaving that. But this is a common misperception of Buddhism. We don't leave or annihilate anything. Buddhism is about the mind. All of that still remains. He's still his mother's son. That doesn't evaporate because he takes on a new directive in his life. That directive being enlightenment, awakening. What you leave behind when you attain enlightenment are your attachments, your illusions of permanence, your illusions of possession. The stuff's still there. It's your mind that changes, that leaves delusion behind and replaces it with a completely new appreciation and compassion for all that is. See, I used to say this decades ago, even prior to Buddhism, that if you're going to change your mind, you first have to realize the myths and the mythologies that you run your mind with, that you have accepted and replayed and own in your mind that create your bad behavior or suffering. But you can't just simply go, I'm not doing that anymore. Because those mythologies run deeper than our consciousness. So if you really want to change who you are, how you are, so on and so forth, you need to replace those myths with much more life-affirming myths. As I became a student of Buddhism, I understood what I knew had to happen wasn't a mythology so much as a completely new perspective, perception, free of mythologies altogether. That was a step I wasn't clear on when I was a teenager. That step came from Buddhism. So here we're talking about leaving the household, and Vimalakirti, much to his wisdom, is noting that Rahula has fallen into the trap of these wealthy sons and is answering their question in their realm of understanding rather than from his own perch, if you will, of knowing better. He ought to. He's the Buddha's son. He ought to know this. And as the Buddha's son, filial piety and all, he should be most capable of pointing out this error rather than responding in kind. So, yeah, Vimalakirti's criticism is valid. And I'm sure Rahula at that point thought, damn it, I reacted instead of using wisdom to respond. So Vimalakirti goes on. Then Vimalakirti addressed the rich man's son, saying, so not Rahula, let me talk to you guys and give you the answer that you should have gotten. Now that you are all in the midst of the correct law, you should all join in leaving the household life. Why? Because it is rare to happen on a time when the Buddha is in this world. You're all caught up in your householdness, in all these constructs of ownership, you wealthy, privileged little boys. You have no idea what you're asking. Perhaps, since you are here, you recognize who Rahula is. You certainly recognize Shakyamuni. What are you playing at? Get serious here. Vimalakirti putting it directly to them. But as you know, Vimalakirti is a personage representing Shakyamuni teaching here. So there's this little back and forth going on here. But the rich man's son said, quote, layman, talking down to Vimalakirti, layman, we have heard the Buddha say that one must not leave the household life without the permission of one's parents. Oh, okay. In that case, you should set your minds on attaining Anuttara Samyak Sambodha, said Vimalakirti. That is the same as leaving the household, the same as taking monastic vows. So Vimalakirti just sort of sidesteps that because obviously these arrogant young men have taken the Shakyamuni's teaching of not leaving the household without the parents' permission out of context. They've missed the point that Vimalakirti is saying. Go ahead, live at home with your mom and dad. change your mind. That's the household I'm talking about. Your land of possessions. Oh, but it's hard for you wealthy kids to let go of possession, isn't it? That's your very identity. It's the same for all of us, but it's easier to point at this example in society, right? So this expedient means, right? At that time, 32 rich men's sons all set their mind on attaining Anuttara Samyak Sambodhai. Oh yeah, I'll show you, I can do it. Therefore I say I am not competent to visit Vimalakirti and ask about his illness. This is Rahula saying, he so quickly came to the root of the matter with these people, and I stumbled. How can I go with egg on my face and visit Vimalakirti and check up on him? He'll probably correct me for doing that. What is going on in Rahula's mind? And this is the point this story is repeatedly making. We create our own obstacles. Rather than appreciating our opportunities for enlightenment, teaching, seeing what we're stumbling on, wouldn't you rather, and this happens all the time, I've been a critic of it myself, you touch something and burn your finger, and then a voice from the background comes and says, "That's hot, you shouldn't touch it." Oh, well, thanks so much for that report. Couldn't, 10 seconds earlier, you have said exactly the same thing? Did you actually have to wait and watch me grab the hot iron and burn and howl for you to then tell me, "Be careful, that's hot"? How useless is that? Right? The Buddha said to Ananda, Rahula, let me go to your cousin, Ananda. You must go to visit Vimalakirti and ask about his illness. Ananda said to the Buddha, guess what? I'm not competent. Here's why. Because I recall once in the past, when the world-honored one was feeling somewhat ill and needed some cow's milk, I at once took my begging bowl, went to the home of some of the great Brahmins, and stood by the gate. At that time, Vimalakirti approached and said to me, Ananda, what are you doing, standing here early in the morning with your begging bowl? I replied, Layman, the world-honored one is suffering from a slight bodily illness and needs some cow's milk. That's why I've come here. Okay. But Vimalakirti said, hush, hush, Ananda. Never speak such words. Well, what am I doing wrong? The body of the thus come one is diamond hard in substance. All evils have been cut away. Manifold good things gather there. How could it know illness? How could it know distress? Go your way in silence, Ananda, and do not defame the thus come one. Don't let others hear you speak such coarse words. Don't let these heavenly beings of great majesty and virtue and these bodhisattvas who have come from the pure lands of other regions hear such utterances. Have I misunderstood why my uncle feels so poor, or are they cousins? Anyway, Shakyamuni seems to be feeling ill. I need to get his medicine. I'm being compassionate. I'm being a good disciple, yeah? And now Vimalakirti is chastising me for even entertaining the idea that Shakyamuni Buddha has any kind of illness. What have I missed, right? Ananda, even a wheel-turning sage king with his few rewards, is still able to exempt himself from illness. How much more so, then, the thus come one who, in whom immeasurable rewards meet, the surpasser of all. Be on your way, Ananda, and do not inflict this shame on us. Wow, it's pretty hardcore. Ananda, for his thinking, was simply doing a good thing. But doing that good thing made an assumption, and that assumption was insulting. Okay. If the non-Buddhists and Brahmins should hear such talk, they would think to themselves, why call this man teacher? He cannot save himself from illness, so how could he save others from their illnesses? Slip away quickly now, and so no one will hear what you have said. Okay, still don't understand. I understand what you're saying, but what am I not getting, right? Ananda, you should know that the body of the thus come one is the Dharma body, not the body of the world of thought and desires. So how could there be illness in such a body, yeah? The Buddha is the world-honored one who transcends the threefold world. The Buddha body is free of outflows, for all of its outflows have been cut off. Attachments. The Buddha body is unconditioned and does not fall within the realm of destinies. A body such as this, how could it know illness? How could it know distress? At that time, world-honored one, I felt truly ashamed, and I thought, I must go to the Buddha and ask if I heard him incorrectly. But at that moment, I heard a voice in the sky saying, Ananda, it is as the layman has said, but the Buddha has appeared in the evil world of 5 impurities, and at present is practicing the law so as to save and liberate living beings. Go, Ananda, get the milk, and do not feel ashamed. But world-honored one, Vimalakirti commands such wisdom and eloquence as this. That is why I say I am not competent to visit him and ask about his illness. Thus, all 500 of the major disciples, one by one, described to the Buddha some earlier experience and the words that Vimalakirti had spoken on that occasion, each declaring, I am not competent to visit him and ask about his illness. 500 disciples, he asked, and 500 had justifications for not doing anything. Interesting. And that takes us to the next chapter, the Bodhisattvas. How is this story going to resolve? We understand that there are illusions abound in all the disciples. They have hit moments of challenges to their understanding of their practice of Buddhism, of the world. And it has stopped them in their tracks. Stopped them so hard in their tracks that they refuse to do as they're asked of by Shakyamuni Buddha. That's incredible, isn't it? The Buddha then said to Bodhisattva Maitreya, you must go visit Vimalakirti and inquire about his illness. Forget all these great disciples. I'm going directly to the Bodhisattvas. There's a different level of commitment in these people. Supposedly, much more Buddha wisdom in their behavior, right? Coursing as Bodhisattvas. But Maitreya replied to the Buddha, world-honored one, I am not competent to visit him and inquire about his illness. Okay, Maitreya. Why? Shakyamuni's not asking that question. This is Maitreya offering it up, just like everybody else did. Because I recall how once in the past I was preaching to the king of the Tushita heaven and his followers on the practices required to attain the state of non-regression. At that time, Vimalakirti approached. Boy, this guy gets around, doesn't he? And he said to me, Maitreya, the world-honored one prophesied that with one more birth, you will be able to attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Now, just what birth does this prophecy apply to? Moment to moment. Don't get lost. Does it apply to your past birth, your future birth, or your present birth? If it applies to your past birth, that past birth has already passed into extinction. It's gone. Past is no longer. If you maintain your past in your current mind, then you're not living in this moment, nor the next. The past is gone, extinct. If it applies to the future birth, that future birth has yet to arrive. You can't make predictions or experience the future, just this moment into the next. Is that a future? Not until that moment occurs, right? And if it applies to the present birth, this present birth lacks permanence because it's gone as soon as you see it, right? For as the Buddha has said, monks, one moment you are born, the next you grow old, the next you pass into extinction. Moment to moment we live, yes? Or does the prophecy apply to the state of birthlessness? Yes, remove yourself from the drama of trying to maintain every moment of life and project it into a future or the past, and become an observer of the moments. But birthlessness is none other than the state of correct realization. And the stage of correct realization can have nothing to do with prophecies of enlightenment or with the attainment of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. So how, Maitreya, can you be given this prophecy about one birth? Were you given this prophecy because of some birth that pertains to suchness? Or were you given this prophecy because of some extinction that perhaps pertains to suchness? If you were given this prophecy because of some birth that pertains to suchnesses, or suchness, you should know that in suchness there is no birth. And if you were given this prophecy because of some extinction that pertains to suchness, you should know that in suchness there is no extinction. Formation isn't a form, it's an energy. It radiates, it has no dimension. All living beings are a part of suchness, and all other things as well are part of suchness. The sages and worthy ones, too, are a part of suchness. Even you, Maitreya, are a part of suchness. So if you have been given a prophecy of enlightenment, then all living beings should likewise be given such a prophecy. This is circling around original enlightenment, isn't it? This state of Buddha is something to awaken to, not to discover, not to find. Is simply a realization. Why? Because suchness knows no dualism or differentiation. If you, Maitreya, are able to attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, then all living beings should likewise be able to attain it. Ta-da! Why? Because all living beings in truth bear the marks of Bodhi. Enlightenment is a natural state of all living things, matter. If you, Maitreya, are able to gain nirvana, then all living beings should likewise be able to attain it. Why? Because Buddhas know that all living beings bear the marks of tranquil extinction, which is nirvana, and that there is no further extinction. Therefore, Maitreya, you must not use doctrines such as this to mislead these offsprings of the gods. For in truth, there is no such thing as setting one's mind on the attainment of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi or of attaining the state of non-regression. See, it's that difficulty with words of describing becoming aware of something that's already there rather than becoming a discoverer of something elsewhere. Words, right? Maitreya, you should persuade these offspring of the gods to abandon any view that makes distinctions concerning Bodhi. Why? Because Bodhi is not something that can be acquired by the body or acquired by the mind. It's already there. Tranquil extinction is Bodhi, for in all marks become extinct. Non-contemplation is Bodhi, for it is divorced from all causes. Non-action is Bodhi, for it is devoid of thought and mental activity. Cutting off is Bodhi, for it abandons all views. Removal is Bodhi, for it means the removal of all deluded thoughts. Understand, removal isn't extinction or a nihilistic, a destruction of the body. It is always about the mental construct of what it means to have a body, the attachment to it. Blocking is Bodhi because it blocks out all aspiration. He's using words and redefining as he goes, yes? Non-involvement is Bodhi because it is without greed or attachment. Compliance is Bodhi because it complies with suchness. Abiding is Bodhi because it abides in the Dharma nature. Extending is Bodhi, for it extends to the limit of reality. Non-duality is Bodhi, for it is removed from thoughts and thought objects, which is where our earthly consciousnesses are stuck, yeah? We have an I consciousness, but in order to have an I consciousness, it has to have something for the I to perceive. Duality doesn't mean becoming Buddha makes you blind. Becoming Buddha is to see all without the need of the I consciousness to become the perceiver and collector of objects of seeing. Everything is a moment-to-moment flow of energy. Equality is Bodhi, for in it all is equally empty and void. The unconditioned is Bodhi, for it knows no birth, abiding, or extinction. Understanding is Bodhi, for it fully comprehends the mental activities of living beings. Non-engagement is Bodhi because it enters into no kind of engagement with objects. That's attachment defined another way, yes? Collection, obsession. Non-participation is Bodhi because it has freed itself from the habits of earthly desires. Doesn't mean you don't have the desires. It frees yourself from those habits. The dwellingless is Bodhi because it lacks shape or form. What's pre-shape or form? Energy, formation. Formation is not form. Formation is energy with tendencies and conditions, yeah? Karma. Suchness. The provisionally named is Bodhi because names and words are void. Right back to words. Phantom-like is Bodhi, for it neither grasps nor lets go. Untroubled is Bodhi, for it is forever still of itself. Good tranquility is Bodhi, for it is pure in nature. Ungrasping is Bodhi, for it is removed from distracting causes. Right? Non-differentiation is Bodhi, for in it all phenomena are equal. The word I use is potential. Potential isn't anything except the potential for anything. So everything is the same. It's energy, unformed. Incomparable is Bodhi, for no simile can convey it. The futility of words. So, and all he's given us is similes, yeah? Subtle and wonderful is Bodhi, for phenomena are hard to understand. World-honored one Vimalakirti expounded the law in this fashion. 200 offsprings of the gods were able to grasp the truth of birthlessness. Therefore I say, I'm not competent to visit him and ask about his illness. I still don't get this stumbling block. This is all ego. If you concede this is a better man, why does that halt you from loving compassion for his troubles? By what we've read so far, if he's truly enlightened, then he shouldn't be experiencing illness. So, yeah, he's a very wise man, a monk, a lay monk, a bodhisattva. So aren't you curious now? If I've heard, somehow we've heard that Vimalakirti's ill, it was Vimalakirti himself that sent that out, wasn't it? Well, maybe this whole thing is a lesson / test / do you really know what you're talking about? That seems to be the leitmotif of Vimalakirti, doesn't it? I'm curious now. Are you? The Buddha then said to Bodhisattva Shining Adornment, a young boy, you must go visit Vimalakirti and ask about his illness. I thought my candle went out. Nope. But Shining Adornment replied to the Buddha, World-honored one, I'm not competent to visit him and inquire about his illness, because I remember once in the past when I was leaving the great city of Vaishali, Vimalakirti was just then entering the city, and I accordingly bowed to him and said, Layman, where are you coming from? He replied, I am coming from the place of practice. The place of practice, where is that? I asked. He replied, an upright mind in the place of practice, for it is without shame or falsehood. The resolve to act is the place of practice, for it can judge matters properly. A deeply searching mind is the place of practice, for it multiplies benefits. The mind that aspires to Bodhi is the place of practice, for it is without error or misconceptions. Wow, that'd be one to put on a little plaque on the refrigerator, isn't it? Almsgiving is the place of practice, because it hopes for no reward. Observance of the precepts is the place of practice, because it brings fulfillment of vows. Forbearance is the place of practice, because it enables one to view all living beings with a mind free of obstruction. Assiduousness is the place of practice, because it forestalls laziness and regression. Meditation is the place of practice, because it makes the mind tame and gentle. Wisdom is the place of practice, because it sees all things as they are. Pity is the place of practice, for it views all living beings equally. Compassion is the place of practice, for it bears up under weariness and pain. Joy is the place of practice, for it revels in Dharma delight. Indifference is the place of practice, for it rejects both hatred and love. Okay. That word love, it's a complex one, right? It has all kinds of attached meanings to it. Transcendental powers are the place of practice, because thereby one masters the 6 powers. Emancipation is the place of practice, because it knows how to renounce and how to set aside. Wait a minute, this young boy was just asking where you'd been. But Vimalakirti takes the opportunity to just rain down this highly what should we call it? The profoundness of being, the profoundness of his own fascination with the enlightenment of Buddhism, right? Did the young boy really need to hear that at the time? That's not what he was asking, but It certainly gave Vimalakirti to do some teaching, didn't it? And maybe the boy needed to hear it. Let's go on. Expedient means are the place of practice, because they can teach and convert living beings. The four methods of winning people are the place of practice because they can win living beings over. Much learning is the place of practice because one carries out what one has learned. A disciplined mind is the place of practice because one can thereby contemplate all phenomena correctly. The 37 elements of the way are the place of practice because through them one rejects what is conditioned. Truth, or the Four Noble Truths, is the place of practice because it does not deceive the world. Ooh, he's got a lot to say. Causes and conditions are the place of practice, for none of the links in the chain of causation, from ignorance to old age and death, ever come to an end. Earthly desires are the place of practice, for through them we know the nature of suchness. Living beings are the place of practice, for through them we know that there is no ego, that it's all manufactured, in other words. All phenomena are the place of practice, for through them we know the emptiness of all phenomena. When we perceive correctly, yes? Where are we time-wise? Okay, I'll go a little bit further. Conquering devils is the place of practice, overcoming obstacles. Because one is unswayed and unflinching, they just help to prove out our practice, yes? The threefold world is the place of practice because there is no path for one there. The path is in the mind, attitude and intent. How resolved are you to be awake, enlightened? The lion's roar is the place of practice because it has nothing it fears. The 10 powers, the 4 kinds of fearlessness, the 18 unshared properties are the place of practice because they are free of all fault. Now he's delving into all sorts of other prior teachings, right? The assumed knowledge base. The 3 understandings are the place of practice because they are without the least obstruction. Understanding all phenomena in one instant of thought is the place of practice. 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. Without actually saying it, but it's been there all along, right? Because one thereby becomes a master of all wisdom. My good fellow, if bodhisattvas apply themselves to the paramitras and teach and convert living beings, then you should understand that everything they do, every lifting of a foot, every placing of a foot, will in effect become coming from a place of practice, an abiding in the Buddha's law. Finally, he gets to his point. What Vimalakirti was basically telling this young boy who was asking a simple question of, you're coming from outside the city, where did you venture, where did you go? Vimalakirti is answering him with, because my mind is always focused on my Buddha nature. Whatever I do, wherever I go, however I am, is an expression of my staunch resolve for enlightenment. So where, why, how is irrelevant. It's kind of not satisfactory answer because we do live in samsara. But as a teaching moment, okay, I get it. Never asking you again, right? And in fact, this is basically what the young boy says. When Vimalakirti preached the law in this manner, 500 heavenly and human beings all set their minds on attaining Anuttara Samyak Sambodhai. So there was a lot of value in what he was teaching me, and therefore I say I'm not competent to visit him and ask about his illness because it would be a stupid question. In effect, what he's told me is, whatever Vimalakirti is experiencing right now as to his illness his illness is an expression of his practice. So there's really nothing to ask. But again, he's missing the point. It's just being involved, being present has incredible value. But we're on this weird edge now, right? What's Vimalakirti doing? Is this his ultimate teaching? But upholder of the age. Oh, so Buddha asked Bodhisattva, upholder of the age, you must go visit Vimalakirti, inquire on his illness. But, of course, World Honor One, I'm not competent. And here's why. Because I recall once when I was staying in my quiet room, at that time the Devil King Papillas, accompanied by 12,000 heavenly maidens, appeared in the guise of the god Indra. Playing on musical instruments and singing, they came to where I was, and then the devil and his retinue bowed their heads at my feet, pressed their palms together, and stood to one side. I thought it was Indra, and I said to him, "Welcome, Kaushika." It's another name for Indra. Though you enjoy good fortune, you should never behave willfully. You should contemplate the impermanence of the 5 desires and strive thereby to plant good roots. With body, life, and resources, you should cultivate the steadfast law. So he's sitting alone in his room, and obviously he's having these thoughts, right? 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. So there's something of a delusion trying to penetrate his mind. And he responds to that delusion by saying, you should practice, you should seek enlightenment in the Buddha way. But Indra said to me, "Upright one, please accept these 12,000 heavenly maidens." Ooh, I think it's about sex. "They can serve and wait on you." Isn't that a nice enticement? I replied, "Kaushika, a monk, a son of Shakyamuni, has no use for unlawful things such as these. It would not be right for me to accept them." Well, you can tell already, if Vimalakirti is watching this, that's a slip. Before I had finished speaking, here it comes, Vimalakirti approached. Man, he's everywhere. And he said to me, "This is not Indra. This is only a devil who has come to trouble and vex you. This is happening in your mind." So is Vimalakirti, by the way. Then he said to the devil, "You may give these women to me. It is quite all right for me to accept them, because I'm just a layman, right?" The devil was alarmed and fearful, thinking that Vimalakirti was perhaps going to make trouble for him. He tried to hide himself and escape, but he could not make himself invisible. Though he exhausted all his supernatural powers, he could not get away. Just then a voice was heard in the sky. "Papillas, give him the women, then you can escape." The devil, terrified, looked this way and that, and then handed over the women. Vimalakirti then addressed the women, saying, "The devil has given you to me. Now it is proper that you should all set your minds on attaining Anuttara Samyak Sambodhaya." Ha ha! Then, adopting whatever approach was appropriate, he expounded the law to them, awakening in them a desire for the way. Then he said, "Now that you have conceived a desire for the way, you may regale yourselves with Dharma delight and need no longer delight in the pleasures of the 5 desires." The heavenly maidens asked, "What is this you call Dharma delight?" Vimalakirti replied, "To delight in constant resolve in the Buddha." And you hear me say this all the time. It's about confidence. Staying confident in your Buddha nature. Relying on it, knowing it, being in it 24/7, yeah? to delight in the desire to hear the law, to delight in giving alms to the assembly, to delight in the casting off of the 5 desires, to delight in the viewing of the 5 components as vengeful bandits, to delight in the viewing of the 4 great elements as poisonous snakes, to delight in in other words, all of the realizations that come from a clear mind of Buddha-ness, yeah? To delight in honoring and supporting teachers, to delight in practicing widespread generosity, to delight in strict observances, in patience, humility, gentleness, harmony, to delight in diligently amassing good roots, to delight in meditation that is never disordered, to delight in bright, undefiled freedom, broadening the mind and aspiring to Bodhi, to delight conquering and subduing obstacles, devils, cutting off all earthly desires, purifying the Buddha lands, so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. To delight in a mind free of anger and hostility when among those of unlike learning, to delight in guiding and protecting evil friends, people who are misguided, to delight in being friendly with good friends, to delight in a mind that finds joy and purity, to delight in practicing the teachings regarding the immeasurable elements of the way. These make up the Dharma delight of the Bodhisattva. Papias then addressed the women, saying, oh, he's still around? I want now to return with you to my heavenly palace. But the women said, you gave us to this layman, possessing this Dharma delight that affords us such pleasure, we no longer delight in the pleasures of the 5 desires. Get lost, you pimp. Basically. The pimp said, the devil said, layman, you should give up these women. He who gives all he possesses as a gift to others is a bodhisattva. Right. Vimalakirti replied, I have already given them up. You may take them away, and may you enable all living beings to fulfill their desire for the Dharma, since you claim to be a bodhisattva now. But the women said to Vimalakirti, how can we remain in the palace of the devil? Vimalakirti replied, sisters, there is a teaching called the inexhaustible lamp. You must study it. The inexhaustible lamp is like a single lamp that lights 100 or 1,000 other lamps till the darkness is all made bright with the brightness that never ends. In this same way, sisters, one bodhisattva guides and opens the path for 100 or 1,000 living beings, causing them to set their minds on attaining Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. And this desire for the way will never be extinguished or go out by following the teaching, not the person. By following the teachings as it has been preached, one keeps adding until one has acquired all good teachings. This is what is called the inexhaustible lamp. I'm going to stop there. So, well, one more paragraph. Although you live in the palace of the devil with this inexhaustible lamp, you can enable countless heavenly sons and heavenly daughters to set their minds on attaining Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Thus, you will repay the debt of gratitude you owe the Buddha, and at the same time bring great benefit to all living beings. Those words should sound very familiar to all of us. They are, once again, the exhortation that we pronounce in each Gangyo about enabling all beings to attain Buddhahood, yeah? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. It's a fascinating story. It's a vehicle, a really good example of expedient means. Shakyamuni, a storyteller par excellence, demonstrating the nature of doubt, the nature of collecting justifications to reinforce doubt, and always the return to, that's just frothy bubbles, it's unreal. Get back to Buddha, get back to clarity, Get back to your practice. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for doing this with me. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps us reach more people on YouTube. Don't forget a lot of free information to download off threefoldlotus.com. If there's something that you find lacking there, let me know and I'll make sure to collect. I have so many documents and references for different aspects of Buddhism. To put them all on one site would pretty much occupy all my time. But if there's something particular lacking that you don't see there on the core study materials page, let me know. And I can either offer you a video that answers your question, I can offer you a direct answer, or I can see you're right in something lacking, and I can create another free links or PDF for all of us to share and have that free resource, right? In the meantime, be kind to yourself. Take care of your health. And I will see you very soon, if not tomorrow, with another video. Bye for now.